Button down the hatches and pull the sails! Pick your hex, Scurvy! Ha ha!
Join the team.
Hey theMCGuiREREVIEW, and today we're going to take a look at a brand new one from SFG. Now this is Sea of Thieves. If you know Sea of Thieves, it is a video game title that they have adapted to a board game. So I'll tell you, I'm kind of a sucker for video games that are actually adapted to board games. I really like when companies do that, especially when they do it well. And I think SFG has done this really well today. So what are we going to talk about? This is going to be kind of a review, overview of this game, and really homes in on, which I found I think works really well for folks, on the topic of should you buy the game, okay? So we're going to go over some things that are good. We're going to go over some things that could be potentially a little bit better. And you're going to have to decide if this is kind of a game for you, and I'll give you my thoughts as well, and how I like the game, or I do not like the game. So I'll share all that with you over the course of the video. Now, this one here is the Voyage of Legends. It does come with a lot. So as you can see, here's the topper box. It's not too big of a box. So it is surprising like how much stuff you do get into this game. You can see about everything that is included in the game here, and it is a lot of different components. There's a lot of stuff. I was a little overwhelmed when I got it all out. I thought, wow, I didn't anticipate, because when I saw this at Gen Con, they obviously had, a little table. They had it set up there. And they had kind of a, not everything out on the table, just whatever could kind of fit for their little demo. So I was surprised when I got everything out of the box, just how much stuff is actually included here. I'll show you the box just as kind of part of the review here. It's a nice thick box. Here's the rule book, which was much bigger than I thought it was, or thicker than I thought it was going to be as well. We'll talk about that. It does come with a nice little plastic insert here to kind of hold everything down nice and tight, and a nice plastic insert inside that's compartmentalized for your different bits and chits and different things that will need to go back in the box. So I think they did a really nice job from the box's perspective, and not just kind of everything sort of has to just get thrown back in there. Very thick, very high quality box, but you can see it's not a big box at all. But there's a ton of stuff here that is included, and a ton of gameplay. So I think what we'll do is we'll kind of start with just a high-level overview of what's going on in this game, and then we'll kind of break down some of those different layers of complexity, and then we'll get kind of into the rule book here. Right from the start, you can see there's a lot of components, right? A lot of different types of little chits and different things. I was popping out little chits for some time, as there is a ton of these little circular and square chits that are in this game. Some of it is sort of your currency, which is very much used in a productive way in this game. Some of it is damage tokens. Some of it is like when you achieve different voyages you go on. Some of it tracks the water level on your boat to see if it's sunk yet, depending on how much damage it's taken. Some of it is your little action tokens that you will use when it's your turn. And then there's a number of tokens that will go into these two little included baggies here. I put all of my loot tokens in this black bag, and I put all of my treasure tokens in this gold bag. So that's how I do it. You'll see there's a number of standees that are included. So every player will start off with two of these smaller ships here that you'll pilot, and you'll apply actions, and you'll have a crew for. It's really cool. You'll be able to upgrade those ships as you play the game to kind of, we'll say, a medium-sized ship, and then a full-size grand large ship that you have here, which is pretty cool that you're capable of doing that. You could go through the game and not upgrade any of your ships, but I do recommend that you do that. You don't have to, right? It's part of one of the things that you can do in this game is you can go for the amount of money that you need, get to a specific spot on the board, and then you can upgrade your ship and get a bigger, more powerful ship, which obviously could then hold more crew. It can do more stuff. It does make your turns and your actions more efficient the larger these ships get. So that's something to kind of play out strategically as you play the game, but it's only one aspect of this game, okay? You'll also notice that there is a number of tokens up here for like various different enemies that you can have on the board as well that will come out. We'll talk about that. It's a whole nother layer of this game. There's different enemies that can come out, megalodons and krakens and ghost ships and ghost fort islands and all kinds of really cool stuff that you can interact with while you're just trying to be a pirate and plunder the seas. So that's a pretty awesome concept of this game as well. I will say, from a components perspective, I think it was smart because this game does come at a pretty good price point. It was smart to go with the artwork standees. They do look really good, great artwork. They look nice on the board. They're fun. I don't have a problem with it. It keeps the cost down, so I think that was a smart initial offering. I would like to see them, and I do believe they probably have this in the works. Well, I'm not going to say because I don't know, but I would suspect that they probably are thinking about, could they release maybe an expansion, like a miniatures expansion in the future? I'd love to see that. If they don't have that in the works, you need to put that in the works to offer some type of just small box miniature expansion where you get the miniatures for the enemies, you get the miniatures for the boats. Now, if you do have some miniatures laying around, if you do RPGs and whatnot, or if you have, other games that have boat miniatures, you could always sub them out. But I'm not going to do that until I get the official miniatures that go with this game. So hopefully they do that, and we get something like that. There are a number of dice that are included. You'll be doing dice rolls over the course of the game as well, which I really like. I'm glad they added the aspect of having the dice. You got to have a dice in a pirate game, in my opinion. So it's awesome that they have these, and you do get a decent amount. They look nice. They're high quality dice. They really are. And I would just say overall, from a components perspective, everything is really high quality. The chits are high quality, the standees are good, the dice are good, the cards are good. It's all standard thickness stuff, but they're nice and coated. I mean, everything is very high quality from that perspective. So really, really well done there. That wraps kind of our sort of component review. Now let's talk about like overarching, what are you going to be doing in this game? One of the things that I thought, and I actually anticipated, was that this game was going to be much simpler than what it actually is. It's not a difficult game. Okay, once you kind of get down, sort of, and I just kind of randomly set up things here for like start at a turn just to kind of get things going, so you can kind of see how much is going on when you're playing. Okay, it's not complex from the perspective of every time it's your turn, it's like, oh my god, I got to remember all, like, it flows pretty intuitively once you understand what you're supposed to do when it's your turn, and you've had a couple turns, like, it starts to flow pretty intuitively. But there are a number of layers of complexity to this game that I did not expect. I was actually surprised with when I started to play. I really thought, because of the size of the box, and, it's a video game, they're probably just going to focus on more of the combat aspect. It's probably just going to be a bunch of like dice chucking and doing combat against other boats and like earning gold, going on like bounties or something. But there's so much more to this game than that, and that was very quickly realized. I think I put the rule book back in the box, so that's fine. That was very quickly realized when I pulled the rule book, and I'm like, wow, this is a thick rule book, like for what I expected to get from this game. But there are really multiple layers of stuff that's going on here. When it is your turn, you're going to take an action, and you're going to have 3 of these action points, and you're going to be able to distribute those actions amongst your 2 ships, regardless of the size of those ships that you've upgraded or not upgraded. You're going to have 3 action points to distribute. Now, you can only put up to 2 on a single ship, but you're going to be able to distribute those action points. You're going to be able to take actions for each one of those ships. It's kind of the first piece. And every one of your crew members that's on that ship, and every time you upgrade a ship, you get more slots for crew members. That's why the turns become more efficient the bigger your boat is, because you can do more stuff on your turn. Each one of those crew members is going to get to take an action, like a task that they can do. And that task is a number of things. And they're right here on these cards here. So there's really nice reference cards that are included, and you'll come here and you'll say, okay, the task is I can revive someone who's been defeated. I can sail, which means I can just basically move the boat to one adjacent hex. I can repair the boat, so if you take damage, your water level rises. If your water level gets to the top, your boat is sunk. And that's kind of a cool concept. Anything your boat is holding, its little cargo, like stays there floating in that hex, and you or someone else can then go to it and try to pick it up and loot it, which is fun. And then you can also bail water. So you can just remove one level of water by kind of bailing water out. So there's a number of things that your crew is kind of doing, and I thematically really like that. And then, all part of that action, at the very end, your ship can take sort of like an action. And that's a number of things. You can go full sail, where you roll some dice. It's called crew rolls. Basically, however many crew members you have, that's how many dice you roll. Again, upgrading your boat gets you more crew, making you allowed to roll more dice. So you can see how it's more efficient to be able to upgrade those boats. You roll anything that is a 1 and 2 is a miss. 3, 4, and 5 is a success. 6s are double successes. So I just rolled 2 3s. That would be 2 successes. And you use those for different things, right? So for full sail, that would move you 2 spots. If you were plundering, that would allow you to loot and or kill monsters based on the successes. You can open fire. That's attacking another boat. Those would be successes. You could also trade. So if you get to the central spot called the Outpost, you could trade, which is pretty cool. Or you could do a special action, which is utilization of these fortune cards. So when you're playing the game, you'll always have these fortune cards and these voyage cards. And you'll have different number. You can only have, your hand limit is kind of 3, but you may have up to 6 at any point in time, but at the end of your turn, you do have to kind of discard down to make sure you just have 3 of each of them. But these voyage cards, the fortune cards will allow you to do special extra things. So they may go right along with your core actions of your ship, or they may kind of stand alone and you won't do any of these actions and you'll just do what this card says. So that's kind of a cool concept as well. It isn't just the base tasks and actions of your ship. You also have this layer of using these fortune cards to help modify in your favor maybe what you're doing. So that's really a cool concept. You also have these voyage cards that you can look at as more like little mini quests. And you can activate those upon your turn to say, if you're headed towards one of these islands to do something, maybe one of these voyage cards say, oh, go to that island, and when you do something, you can achieve this voyage or this quest, and you'll get some bonuses, right? Primarily, you'll generally get money, or you'll get reputation, which is where this board comes in, and we'll get there here in a minute. Because to win the game, you got to have the highest reputation at the end. So these little voyages will give you those reputations as you achieve them. Okay, very cool. So that's another kind of concept that you can do there. And that's what you're going to do essentially on your turn. You're then going to, those are kind of your core actions. You're then going to have a Rising Waters section where you will then look at your ships and say, hey, have I taken any damage? If I have, I gotta raise that water. And then you'll end your turn with a cleanup phase where you'll refresh any cards that may have drawn around the Outpost board there, or there's a couple different things you'll do to kind of like refresh, and then the turn will pass. Okay, now each player is going to kind of go through that, and that's called the Fleets phase. You're then going to go into an Ocean Hazards phase. This is where you start layering on more complexities. So you can think of that first phase as like you're doing everything with your ship, you're being a pirate. The second phase, once everyone's done that, is any enemies that have come out on the board, and they will be triggered and come out to the board by the events. So the first round, there won't be any enemies on the board. You then will start to activate these megalodons and krakens, and they'll move around, they'll attack ships, you'll have to try to get out of the way. You can attack them and try to kill them and get them off the board. You'll gain reputation for that. So it's just, could they have left all of that out of the game? They absolutely could have, right? And they actually recommend that you play your first game or two without any of the enemy phase stuff, because it's not required to still play the game. It's just an extra thing that's there. They could have done this thing like a lot of companies do where they don't even have it, and then they could have released the enemies as an expansion. I don't like that. I actually give them props with putting all these things in there that just add the layers of complexity as part of the core game and give it to you all at once for one price, and a low price at that for everything that you're getting here. And then just allow you to use it if you want to or not. I would recommend playing with it. I think it's a core part of the game. I think it adds a lot of extra fun. Okay, so that's the Ocean Hazards phase. You're then going to go into an event phase where a player is going to draw an event card. It's right over there on the Outpost board. And you're just going to read that event card. It's going to have like 3 main sections. You're generally going to be adding enemies. You're going to be changing the board in some way, maybe adding treasure to here and there. There's a number of different things that can happen in the event phase. Okay, you're just going to read the card, do what it says. Then you're going to have a fortune phase. That's where you're going to then draw fortune cards, and you're going to take your next turn, and then at the end of your turn, you kind of have to discard down and just make sure you have only 3 cards. So you're always going to have a lot of options when it comes to fortune cards specifically. You're generally going to have a decent amount of options when it comes to these voyage cards. Okay, a couple other things that I'll call out is you can always use resource tokens to block like people being hit and defeated. So that's a nice little option where you don't just immediately lose a crew member. You can block that if you have resource tokens. There's also another little layer to this game that's called commissions. So when you go back to the Outpost to sell specific types of things, there are 3 different types. There's the Gold Hoarders, the Order of Souls, and the Merchants Alliance. And if you sell 3 of the exact same type all at once, you get a bonus for doing that, and you'll get more of this reputation around this board here. So it's always beneficial to kind of collect and sell things in 3s as well to get that extra reputation. So just, another little kind of set collection / layer of complexity that's sort of in the game as well. All right? And that's essentially kind of what you'll do within a turn and within a round. The last piece that I'll say is you have this whole outpost board. So when you go to this center spot, and only in this center spot, you can do a number of things. You can upgrade your ship. You can repair your ship. You can obtain sort of like crew captains. They're like special crew. They're named crew, and there's a little token for each one of them here, where it'd be different than just say crew to actually have an image of the named crew and their name on it. They all do different things. So for this player, I took the turn of actually doing some things, then going to the Outpost, and I paid 400 gold. To tell you right what it's worth, right up on top, but you got to pay for it. And I got Grace Morrow. And Grace Morrow is a special crew member. And it says, when this ship makes a plunder action, roll an additional die. So that's a really, really powerful crew member to have to start the game, because now, with my sloop here, the smallest ship, I can actually plunder, which means I go to these islands, I take a plunder action to get loot, and I can roll 3 dice instead of 2, because these smaller ships only have 2 crew, so I would only be able to do a crew roll of 2. It allowed me to do 3. So that's a big early game bonus to have this crew member. So you're going to want to also strategically want to pay attention to these crew members that are out here and what they do for you and your ship. Okay, so as you can see, there is a number of layers of complexity here. You've got the ship, you got the upgrades, you got plundering, you got attacking, you got enemies that you're trying to attack and/or, because if you attack them and you beat them, or as you do damage, you get reputation as well. You have all the islands, you have the voyages you can go on. It's just, there's so many different things you can do and options when it's your turn. It does kind of add a number of layers of complexity that I did not expect would be here when I opened up the box. I'm glad that it is, because I would say that right now, this 100% is and will be my go-to pirate-style board game. I just absolutely love the gameplay and how it works and how it's laid out. Okay? So that's kind of a high-level review of the game. Now, One of the things that I think absolutely could be better, and this is where I don't want to harp too hard, but I do want to kind of go into this, and I want to make sure that this is specified, and I want to make sure this is heard loud and clear. This is a fantastic game. Fantastic components. Fun gameplay. But it could be ruined by a rule book that's not well put together. And I don't think the rule book is well put together. I think the rule book is kind of a mess. And it's very lengthy. There's a lot of imagery that doesn't add value. You have to get to page 16 before you're even being shown how to play the game. Like, setup and playing the game is on page 16. There's that much stuff before it to just like read and consume that doesn't really make sense because you're not actually going over the rules of the game and how to play the game yet. I am not a fan for rule books that have this design, and I don't know where this is coming from, but I'm seeing it on a lot of different publishers, and I'll just tell you guys it doesn't work. Stop designing your rule books where you have like this little snippet about something to like cue it up, and then later in the book you like actually say how it's used, and then later further in the book you like add even another sentence on the rule of it. I think people think sort of like you read through and it's easier to digest. It's not, because when you go back to the rule book to like understand or recheck something, you're like thumbing through 3-4 different pages of the book trying to find what you need. Because there's one sentence of something at the very back, there's a paragraph at the very front, and then there's another section in the how to play. Just put everything in one section around how to conceptually use something in the how to play, right? That's just my opinion. I really find it to be a challenge when it's done in this other style, and this book is done in that style. I found myself, even in the simplicity, because when you open this book and you look at it, it's like, it just seems like little tiny paragraph, huge picture, little tiny paragraph. Like, it seems like it's just going to be this quick, easy read. And it's not, because there is a number of things going on here. There's a number of layers of complexity, and that stuff has to be framed mentally into one section so you can just be like, how does crew roll works? Boom, everything with crew rolls is in one section. How does ship movement work? Everything is in one section. So I did find that to be an issue. I also found it that many of the sentences explaining how something would work wasn't worded very well. And it really was kind of a challenge to be like, what does this mean? How does this rule work? And I had to really play the game to then be like, oh, that's what it means. Okay, now I understand. Shouldn't be that way. You shouldn't have to play the game to properly interpret a sentence in the rule book. It should be crystal clear in the rule book, and it should drive you to know exactly how to play the game. So I did find that a few different spots in the rule book as well. I'm calling all this out not to turn anybody away from this game, because I think it would be a mistake if this is the style of game that you like to turn away from this game. But you need to be aware of that when you open the rule book and go through, there may be like, what does that mean? Or like trying to find information because it's spread across the whole entire rule book. So if I was designing that rule book, it'd be half the size, half the amount of pages, much more consolidated, and I think it would be a lot more straightforward for people just to go right to where it was. Because once you start to play this game, you're not really going to go, you're not going to be jumping back to the rule. Like the first game, you probably will. After that, you won't, because it does become very intuitive, and these reference cards are done really well. Each player will have a double-sided one. You get all the actions on one side. You get kind of the flow of the game on the other side. You get all the important icons that you need. And with 3 or 4 people sitting around the table, all looking at their reference cards, helping one another, it will flow pretty intuitively, and you don't really run into those problems anymore. And then it just becomes a ton of fun, and the game is great. But I say so much on that, not to sort of constructively beat them up, because I'm a big SFG fan. I think they make phenomenal games. I've been highly impressed with what they've come out with, and I very much look forward to what they are coming out with in the future. I say this because it is so important. I have seen fantastic games go to the grave because the rule book is not a good experience for people. And it's such a shame to see. And I also think this game is really not that talked of that much. Go to YouTube and do a search for it. There's like 3 or 4 videos out there. Why? I have no idea. There's like a number of previews, but there's not a ton of these like, look at this game and how it's played and playthroughs, and I couldn't find them. Like there's hardly nothing out there. There's not that many people talking about the Sea of Thieves board game, and I don't know why, because it is a fantastic board game and it is a lot of fun, and I think a lot more people need to engage with this, check it out, and see if it's for you. So for me, it is definitely a buy. It's definitely a recommend. Hopefully it is for you as well, just because of the fun that it offers. I'll also say, just to end us out here, the games are not quick, I would say. I think 2-player games, and there's a different setup for a 2-player game. It's a smaller board. They do go much faster, but 3 and 4-player games can be a little bit more lengthy. You're not sitting at the table for hours and hours and hours. No, it's not like that, but a couple hours, like you will, because the thing is, like, there is a number of things you can do on your turn, and each player's turn, I mean, if they just know absolutely, like, hey, I'm just going to go do this, and that's what I'm doing. It could be quick. Or if there's a lot of option, or near end game, you could have a player kind of sitting there a little bit and being like, how do I really want to use my 3 actions? Especially when you start to get bigger ships and you have more crew members that can do more tasks. You're going to want to make sure they are done in the right order. You're going to want to make sure that you're really optimizing your turn and getting your ship where you need to go, because you can't just go wherever you want. You can use crew members to move just one spot. You got to roll dice to do full sail, and it's only how many successes allow you to move more hexes. And you may need to hightail out of there if you have an enemy that's near you. That may be your strategy in playing this game. There may be some players that want to get really aggressive with the enemies and fight the enemies and deal with the enemies. Well, that could sink your ship if you're not careful. You may have other players that are like, you know what? Screw the Kraken and the Megalodon. I'm not messing with them. I'm focusing on, taking out skeletons on islands and looting islands and getting treasure and doing as many of these voyages as I can. And there's 3 different levels of voyages. We didn't mention that, but there are 3 different levels that give you more and more loot and reward when you achieve them. And maybe that's your strategy for the game. So I do really like all the different options. I think it is a fantastic game. It's massive gameplay that is packed into this tiny little box in comparison to what you see in the market today. A massive amount of gameplay that's packed in there, and it's an awesome job, I think, from SFG on this title, Sea of Thieves. Team, with that, keep rolling, crits. This has been the McGuire Review, and we'll see you next time.